The wind in Dry Hollow never stopped screaming. It howled across the empty fields like a warning no one wanted to hear. Fences leaned crooked. Wells had gone dry. The river that once fed the valley was now nothing but cracked earth and old bones. People did not talk about hope anymore. They talked about surviving one more week. And when the black stallion appeared at the edge of town, even the wind seemed to quiet. Women pulled children indoors. Shopkeepers stepped back from their windows. Men stood stiff in the street, but did not reach for their guns. They already knew it would not matter. Silas Boone had arrived. He was not just big. He was built like the hills themselves, tall and wide, with shoulders that blocked the sun and a jaw that looked carved from stone. His coat was long and dark, dust clinging to it like dried blood, and his eyes were pale and empty, the kind of eyes that had seen too much and felt too little. He did not shout. He did not threaten. He simply rode down the center of Dry Hollow like he owned it, because in a way, he did. Behind every dry well stood one name: Ezekiel Crow. Crow owned the dam miles upriver. Crow owned the water, and Silas Boone was the hand that enforced it. From the second-floor window of the small white church, Grace Whitmore watched him. Her fingers pressed against the glass. Her breath fogged the pain. She did not look away. Grace was 20 years old. Her hair was the color of wheat before harvest, always tied back neat and proper. Her dresses were simple, pale, modest. Her father made sure of that. She was known in town as the preacher's girl, quiet, pure, untouched. But her blue eyes held something fierce. And her father, Reverend Samuel Whitmore, sat at his desk behind her, Bible open, shoulders bent with years of bending to fear. "Grace," he said softly, without lifting his head. "Close the curtain." "He is heading toward the Jenkins farm," she replied. "That is not our concern." She turned slowly. "It is everyone's concern." Her father swallowed. "We must not invite trouble into this house." Grace looked back out the window just as Silas dismounted. Old Mr. Jenkins stepped out onto his porch. His hands shook. His wife stood behind him, clutching her apron. There were no raised voices, no drawn guns. Silas spoke low. Calm. Final. Within minutes, 2 of Crow's hired men were leading the Jenkins' last 2 horses away. Mr. Jenkins tried to protest. Silas shoved him once, not hard, but hard enough to send the old man collapsing against his own doorframe. Then, as Silas walked to the rain barrel beside the house, he tipped it. The little water they had saved spilled into the dirt. Grace felt her chest burn. When Silas mounted his horse again, his gaze lifted. It found her in the church window. For a long moment, they stared at one another. There was no cruelty in his face, no pleasure, only something cold and buried. Grace did not step back. The wind returned. "He is evil," her father whispered behind her. Grace shook her head. "He is a man. A dangerous one." She watched until he rode away. Then someone should remind him of that. The next morning, half the town was packing wagons. Deputy Aaron Cole stood outside the general store, his tin star catching the weak sunlight. He was young. Too young. Yet his hands looked unsure, even when resting at his sides. Grace approached him. "They took everything," she said. "The Jenkins are leaving tonight." Aaron's jaw tightened. "What do you expect me to do?" "You are the law." He let out a sharp breath. "Against Crow? Against Boone?" "I am one man." Grace stepped closer. "Then be one man who stands." Aaron looked at her like he wanted to believe her. "If you keep challenging them," he warned quietly, "they will come for this church next." Grace lifted her chin. "Let them." 2 days later, Silas returned. This time, he came alone. He tied his stallion outside the saloon and walked in without a word. The town froze again. Grace stood at the church steps, handing out the last of their dried beans to a hungry mother and child. Her heart beat so loud she could hear it in her ears, but before she could think herself out of it, she crossed the street. Gasps followed her. She pushed open the saloon doors. Every conversation died. Silas stood at the bar, massive hands wrapped around a glass of whiskey. The bartender stared at the floor. Grace stepped forward. "Mr. Boone?" Silas did not turn right away. He finished his drink, then slowly faced her. Up close, he was even larger. His shadow swallowed her small frame. "You should not be here," he said in a deep, steady voice. "I am Grace Whitmore," she replied. "Reverend Whitmore's daughter. I know who you are. Then you know this town is starving." Silas's expression did not change. "That is not my concern." "It should be." He leaned slightly closer. "Oh, go home. You serve a man who is choking this valley. I serve the man who owns it." Grace's hands trembled, but she did not step back. "You are stealing from families who have done nothing wrong." Silas's jaw tightened. They owe. They owe because he made them owe. The room felt heavy. For a flicker of a second, something passed through Silas's eyes. Pain. Then it vanished. "You are playing with fire," he warned. "Maybe someone needs to." Silas set his glass down. "Go home, Grace." "Or what?" His voice dropped lower. "Or I forget you are a preacher's daughter." The words sent a chill through her, but she held his gaze. "There is still good in you," she said softly. Silas's face hardened like stone. "You are mistaken." She left the saloon with her legs shaking, but her spirit burning hotter than ever. That night, Dry Hollow did not sleep easy, and neither did Grace. Every creak of the church walls made her jump. Every gust of wind sounded like boots on the porch. Her father paced, whispering prayers under his breath. "Child," he said finally, "you have stirred something." "Good," she answered. The knock came the following evening. It was not loud. It was steady. Grace's stomach dropped. Her father froze. Again the knock. "Reverend Whitmore," Silas's deep voice called through the door. "By order of Ezekiel Crow, this property is being claimed for unpaid debt." Grace felt her father's hand tremble against her arm. "We have nothing left," he whispered. Silas spoke again. "Open the door." Grace stepped forward before her father could move. "You will not take this house." Her father looked at her in shock. At the third knock cracked the frame. "Open it," Silas warned. Grace grabbed the iron poker from the fireplace. The door burst inward under one powerful kick. Silas filled the doorway like a storm. Dust swirled around his boots. "Move," he said. "You will not touch this church." "I am not here for the church." "Then leave." He stepped inside anyway. Grace raised the poker, though her hands shook violently. Silas looked at her weapon, then at her. "You cannot stop me. Try me." For a moment, they simply stared at one another. Then he moved forward to push past her. Fear surged through her chest. "Don't come inside," she breathed. "Please, don't cross this line." The words left her without thinking. Raw, desperate. Silas paused. Something in her voice hit him hard. His jaw clenched. "I have orders. And I have faith." He gently but firmly took the poker from her grip and set it aside. He did not hurt her. He simply began removing furniture. Chairs, tables, her mother's old rocking chair. Each item carried out like it meant nothing. Grace followed him outside, tears burning her eyes. You are tearing apart people who have already lost everything. He did not answer. When he stepped back toward the doorway again, she blocked him once more. Please, she whispered, her voice breaking. Don't come inside again. There is nothing left to take. Silas looked down at her. Up close, she could see a scar running along his collarbone, a faded bruise near his jaw. Old wounds that told stories no one asked about. You should not have challenged me, he said quietly. Maybe you should not have listened to him. For a heartbeat, his expression shifted. Then, heavy hoofbeats echoed from the road. Crow's riders approached. Silas glanced toward them, then back at Grace. You have made this worse, he murmured. Crow himself rode into view, thin and sharp-eyed, smile cold as winter. Well done, Boone, Crow called. Clear it out. Silas did not move. Crow's gaze shifted to Grace. So this is the preacher's girl who thinks she is brave. Grace stepped closer to Silas without meaning to. Crow smirked. Finish it. Silas stood still. The wind screamed louder, but Grace felt her heart pounding against her ribs. She looked up at the giant cowboy. Don't, she whispered. And for the first time, Silas Boone looked like a man caught between chains and something far more dangerous. Choice. Crow's smile faded when Silas did not move. The riders behind him shifted in their saddles. The town watched from doorways and windows, silent and afraid. I gave you an order, Crow said calmly. Silas kept his eyes on Grace. She could feel the heat of him beside her, the tension in his body, the war happening behind those pale eyes. Finish it, Crow repeated. Silas finally stepped forward. Grace's breath caught. He walked past her, not toward her father, toward the church doors. He placed his massive hand against the wood. Then he pushed them closed instead of open. And the sound echoed across the street. Crow's eyes narrowed. What are you doing? Silas turned slowly. They have nothing left. That is not your concern. Silas's jaw flexed. The debt is paid in full. They will leave by morning. Grace felt the world tilt. Crow let out a soft laugh that held no humor. Since when do you decide what is paid? Silas stepped down from the porch. He stood tall, but there was something different in the way he held himself now. Less like a weapon, more like a wall. They leave by morning, he repeated. Crow studied him for a long moment. Then his gaze shifted to Grace. Interesting, he murmured. Very interesting. He tipped his hat slightly. One night, Reverend. At sunrise, I expect this property empty. With that, he turned his horse and rode off, his men following. The town slowly exhaled. Grace's knees felt weak. Her father stepped outside, pale and shaken. You defied him, he whispered to Silas. Silas did not look at him. He looked at Grace. You have until sunrise, he said quietly. After that, I cannot protect you. Why? She asked. He hesitated. Then he walked away without answering. That night, the church was heavy with silence. Candles burned low. Boxes were half-packed. Reverend Whitmore sat in the front pew, face buried in his hands. Grace stood near the altar, staring at the wooden cross hanging above it. You should not have angered Crow, her father said softly. He is already angry, she replied. He owns the water. He owns this land. Then why are you so afraid of him? Her father's shoulders shook. There are things you do not know, he whispered. But Grace turned toward him. Then tell me. He lifted his head slowly. I owe him more than money. Her stomach tightened. What does that mean? Years ago, during a brutal winter, her mother had fallen ill. Medicine cost more than they had. Crow had offered help, a loan, generous terms. But nothing Crow offered was ever generous. When her mother died anyway, the debt remained. And Crow had returned, not asking for money, but obedience. Her father had signed papers he never read fully. Land agreements, water access rights, clauses buried in pages of legal words. The church land had slowly become Crow's leverage over the town. "You gave him power over everyone," Grace whispered. "I was trying to save your mother. And now you are letting him destroy us." Her father wept quietly. Grace felt anger and sorrow twist inside her chest. After midnight, there was another knock. Not loud, not forceful. Just one. Grace's heart jumped. She opened the church door before her father could stop her. Silas stood there alone. Moonlight cut across his face, making him look carved from shadow. "You should not be here," she said. "You should not have spoken to Crow like that," he replied. "Yet here you are." He stepped inside slowly. The church felt smaller with him in it. Her father rose from the pew. "We are leaving at dawn." "You should leave tonight," Silas said. "And go where?" Grace asked. "Every well belongs to him." Silas did not answer. He walked down the aisle, boots echoing softly. Grace followed. "You stood against him," she said. "Why?" He stopped near the altar. "I was not always his man," he said quietly. She waited. 8 years ago, I worked the river crossings north of here. Crow's shipments moved through that route. One night, a wagon burned. 2 men died. Grace's breath slowed. Crow said I was responsible, said my carelessness cost him. He had witnesses, papers. He offered me a choice. Prison, or work off the debt. And you believed him? I believed I had no other path. Grace stepped closer. And now? Silas looked at the cross above the altar. Now I am not sure the debt was ever real. Silence filled the space between them. "You are stronger than him," she said.